Everyone knows how The Lord of the Rings ends. In the movies, the ring is destroyed when Gollum falls into Mount Doom after struggling with Frodo. In the books, Gollum falls into Mount Doom after his victory dance goes wrong. What if I told you that this ending wasn't always set in stone? In one of Tolkien's letters, he outlines a very different ending to The Lord of the Rings. One that's shaped around a pivotal point in the story that Tolkien calls the most tragic moment in the tale. This moment that could have changed everything occurs while Frodo, Sam, and Gollum are climbing the steps to Shelob's tunnel. Up until this moment, Gollum has been internally fighting with himself. You probably already know that before being corrupted by the ring, Gollum was a proto-hobbit called Frodo's mercy has given Smeagol a final chance at redemption, if only he can overcome the Gollum-y parts of himself. He comes across Frodo and Sam asleep and notices how peace was in both their faces. A strange expression passed over Smeagol's lean, hungry face. The gleam faded from his eyes, and they went dim and gray, old and tired. In the books, Gollum's eyes are mentioned a lot. Their appearance reveals which version of him you're dealing with. Gray eyes means he's Smeagol, but green eyes means he's But this difference doesn't mean much to Sam, who views every version of Gollum as a threat. So Sam basically bullies Gollum, which is counterproductive, but until now hasn't done too much damage. But we're definitely dealing with gray-eyed Smeagol at this moment of the book. He turned away, shaking his head, as if engaged in some interior debate. Then he came back, and very cautiously he touched Frodo's knee. But almost the touch was a caress. Could one of the sleepers have seen him, they would have thought that they beheld an old, weary hobbit, an old, starved, pitiable thing. This is the pivotal moment. If Sam simply wakes up and gives Gollum a predator handshake, the history of Middle-earth will be altered. Instead, we get what Tolkien calls the most tragic moment in the tale. Immediately, Sam was wide awake. The first thing he saw was Gollum pawing at Master as he thought. "Hey, you," he said roughly, "what are you up to?" "Nothing, nothing," said Gollum softly. "Nice, Master. But where have you been to, sneaking off and sneaking back, you old villain?" Gollum withdrew himself, and a green glint flickered under his heavy lids. Until this moment, Gollum's redemption had been possible, but according to Tolkien, his repentance is now blighted, and all Frodo's pity is in a sense wasted. Shelob's lair became inevitable. The green glint did not leave his eyes. But Tolkien doesn't just say that this was a pivotal moment and leave the rest to our imagination. He goes on to outline how if Sam hadn't woken up on the wrong side of the cliff that day, we would have gotten a very different ending to The Lord of the Rings. Instead of the story shifting into physical conflicts, Sam fighting Shelob and then storming an orc outpost to rescue Frodo, Tolkien says that the interest would have shifted to Gollum, I think, and the battle that would have gone on between his repentance and his new love on one side and the ring. Given that the ring's temptation increases the closer it gets to Mount Doom, Frodo and Sam would have been walking across the plains of Gorgoroth with a starved, insane, and demonically tempted Gollum at their side. But according to Tolkien, Gollum wouldn't have betrayed them right away. Though Gollum's love would have been strengthened daily, it could not have wrested mastery from the ring. I think that in some twisted and pitiable way, Gollum would have tried to satisfy both. Gollum's mind would inevitably break, but what's less clear is when. Tolkien says certainly at some point not long before the end, he would have stolen the ring or taken it by violence. And this is where we truly get the alternative ending. But possession satisfied, I think Gollum would then have sacrificed himself for Frodo's sake and have voluntarily cast himself into the fiery abyss. The idea of the Gollum we know claiming the ring but retaining the willpower to destroy it seems questionable. But this is not the Gollum we know. Quote, "I think that an effect of Gollum's partial regeneration by love would have been a clearer vision when he claimed the ring. The only way to keep it and hurt Sauron was to destroy it and himself together. And in a flash, he may have seen that this would also be the greatest service to Frodo." Not gonna lie. This ending is cool. It would have removed a complaint you sometimes hear about The Lord of the Rings, that despite being a meticulously crafted story with believable characters, people sometimes feel that the ending is underwhelming. As I mentioned at the start, unlike the movies where Frodo fights Gollum and they both fall off the cliff, in the books, Gollum just steals the ring, quote, dances like a madman, and then the god of Middle-earth, Eru Iluvatar, who basically never intervenes besides rare moments like when he stops Sauron from ever being able to look sexy. Not a joke, look it up. God himself figuratively sticks out an ankle, trips Gollum, and causes the ring to be destroyed. In this alternate ending, the ring would have been destroyed because of Gollum's choices, in one final act that does justice to both sides of his personality. It would have also seamlessly fit within the foreshadowing about Gollum's fate being tied up with the ring.
My heart tells me that Gollum has some part to play yet, for good or ill. The pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of men.
But Tolkien clearly didn't like this change enough for his book to actually change. His reasons for why involve speculation, but we can put together a pretty solid guess. Where modern audiences view Deus Ex Machinas as flaws, Tolkien viewed them as necessary ingredients to the type of story he was telling. A quote, fairy story. Since the genre of fantasy fiction didn't exist, you often see Tolkien talking about fairy stories. But because he's Tolkien, sometimes dictionaries didn't have enough words for the guy, so he would make up his own terms. The most famous being what he called a eucatastrophe, which is, quote, a sudden happy turn in a story which pierces you with a joy that brings tears. Tolkien, quote, asserts that all complete fairy stories must have a eucatastrophe. This begs the question, why? Tolkien was a devoutly religious man, but unlike other authors, he didn't mount his faith onto the center of his story like a crucifix on a wall.
In your world, I have another name.
Yeah, we know. But the eucatastrophe is the closest he ever gets, because according to Tolkien, the greatest eucatastrophe possible in the greatest fairy story is the death and resurrection of Jesus. It's a rare instance of Tolkien's ideology explicitly shaping his story. Check out this video where I explain how he still manages to pull it off. But to be fair, this change would have also had other consequences. It would have greatly diminished the characters we've spent 2 books following, Frodo and Sam. Whether this different ending would have been more or less satisfying is something you can decide for yourself. The fact we're even talking about it means the ending we got was successful, because we don't waste time on alternative endings to stories we don't care about. And if The Lord of the Rings has one takeaway, it's that many people, myself included, care about it a lot. What I'm saying is my eyes aren't green or gray, they're red, 'cause The Lord of the Rings makes me cry. Nailed it! Damn it.